Am I on? Good. The message this morning, we're going to be talking about, some of you, I don't know, just see by an uplifted hand, how many of you think David and Goliath is one of your favorite stories? Anybody? Well, you don't have to think it. How many know David and Goliath is one of your favorite stories? Anybody? All right, so we're going to dive into that this morning, and I think that some of the times that are the most difficult when you're trying to communicate things are dealing with the super familiar stories. You know, how do you retell a story that's been told a million times? And so we're going to look at half of this story this morning, and then you're going to have to come back next week and try to find out who actually wins. So anyway, I'll leave the suspense up in the air for you. But this morning I want to talk about this. Your 5 stones are better than someone else's sword. Your 5 stones are better than someone else's sword. Let's think about that, and let's ask the Lord to help us out this morning. God, we're just so happy and thankful and full of joy to be able to be just hanging out together and be with each other and to sing songs about you and to just be in the same room. And God, I ask this morning that you would help us to get a clearer understanding of you. And God, just help us to get something from this time together that we can take with us for the week. It's going to help us, encourage us, help us to encourage others. And God, just be very, very real in our midst today. God, we know you're here. And we look forward to what you're going to do. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. So we're starting out, last week, we saw where Saul had the king of Israel, who was the very first king of the children of Israel, had been rejected by God. He had been anointed to be the champion of Israel, to defeat Israel's enemies. And he had failed, and Samuel had gone and anointed another king. And when he went to anoint the other king, he thought that one of David's brothers was actually going to be anointed king. And it turned out that David was anointed king, the youngest, the very youngest one. And so I believe, that was in chapter 16. Then we see David serving in Saul's service in the rest of chapter 16. And that's where Saul is in the bad mood, and David calms him down with his musical playing, his harp playing and all of that, and Saul gets upset, tries to kill him, and all this other stuff. Saul was a troubled individual. Saul had issues, and that's where we pick it up in 1 Samuel chapter 17. I believe that 1 Samuel 17 is the justification for 1 Samuel chapter 16. I believe that this is the illustration that is used by the author to show the incompetence of Saul and the heart of David. And so as we think about that, let's dive in and I'll show you the setting here in the first 3 verses. It says this: Now the Philistines gathered their forces for war and assembled at Soko in Judah. Now, I'm probably not saying that right, but that's okay. You never know. Most of you won't know the difference as I pronounce these Hebrew words. Just grin and act like you know what we're talking about. All right? So, I always get corrected by somebody because I'm always wrong. So it's justified, but still, here we go. All right? So, they gathered their forces for war. They assembled at Soko in Judah. They pitched camp at Ephes Damim between Soko and Azekah. You know right where that's at, right? And so anyway, they come. The Philistines gather. Basically, they're going to gather on one hillside. There's a valley in the middle, and the Israelites are going to be on the other hillside. All right, you got the picture? So that's sort of what's happening. Like we're standing here, or I'm standing here. I guess I'm the good guys and the bad guys in this illustration. And so I'm standing here. There's a valley in between us, and then the bad guys are on the other side, or the other army is on the other side, with a valley in between them. Saul and the Israelites assembled and camped in the valley of Elah and drew up their battle line to meet the Philistines. The Philistines occupied one hill and the Israelites another, with the valley between them. There you go. If I'd have just been quiet, you would have figured that out yourself. Now, so the Philistines are in the entire story of David and really the nation of Israel, the Philistines are always a thorn in the side. They're the enemies of Israel. They're always trying to defeat each other. It's an amazing back and forth, but the old enemies are facing off once again. Israel, the children of God, and their enemies, the Philistines. Now, we see the champion and the challenge. The champion and the challenge, all right? Here comes Goliath. The champion named Goliath, who was from Gath. That just all sounds mean, doesn't it? Goliath from Gath. Like if you were wanting to name somebody that was just going to be mean and tough, and that's just it, right? Goliath from Gath. I don't know why I think that's amazing, but anyway. Goliath from Gath came out of the Philistine camp. His height was 6 cubits in a span. Now, his height 6 cubits. A cubit is between your finger and your elbow. Usually the standardized for back then was about 17.5 inches. And then a span would be the point between this part of your finger and this part of your... My cubit span made Goliath much smaller than probably a normal cubit span would. But nonetheless, it was a very imperfect way of measuring things. This says 6 cubits in a span, and generally most of our translations say 6 cubits in a span. Jewish tradition says 4 cubits in a span. Josephus actually says 4 cubits in a span, and the Dead Sea Scrolls that have been found say 4 cubits in a span. So there's some debate about whether Goliath was humongous or just big. And so we'll talk about that in just a minute. He had a bronze helmet on his head. Probably shiny bronze, probably pretty intimidating. He had a bronze helmet on his head, wore a coat of scale armor. Now this isn't like chainmail, this is overlapping, like scales, like a fish. And so he wore a scale armor of bronze weighing 5,000 shekels. And according to our point of reference, that can either be super heavy or super light, right? Depending on what a shekel is. I'll tell you in a minute. But anyway, so his armor weighs 5,000 shekels. On his legs, he wore bronze greaves, and a bronze javelin was slung on his back. His spear shaft was like a weaver's rod. Have you seen a weaver's rod? I haven't either. From what I understand, a normal spear would have been about 1.5 inches in diameter, and this would have been 2 inches to 2.5 inches in diameter. So considerably thicker than a normal spear. And its iron point weighed 600 shekels. His shield bearer went ahead of it. So he had all this stuff, and the guy, he didn't even carry his own shield, he had a guy carry his shield. Another guy. So he came with a little sidekick. I have a feeling in this story that would have been me. Just a little guy trying to carry the shield for the big guy. Anyway, but the shield bearer goes ahead of him. Now, here's the Goliath conversion chart. Alright? So, depending upon whether he's 4 cubits in the span, illustrating for you, 4 cubits in the span, or he was 6 cubits in the span, Goliath was somewhere between 6'6", which back then would have been ginormous, right? That's a big guy. The average person was around 5'6" or 5'7" back then, which I would have fit right in, you know? Some of you would have been extremely tall. Anybody 6'6" here? 6'6"? Yeah, your 15-year-old friend back there is 6'6". Or are you 16? I don't care. I'm jealous. All right. So we got one 6'6". You got to be close. How tall are you? 6'6". I'm not. I'm 5'6". So I would have been about the average. I should have one of you come up here and illustrate this. But at any rate, 6'6". Nobody can illustrate the top end of this though. It's either 6'6", between 6'6" and 9'6". That is off the scale big, right? 9'6". There's never been a known human being in our history that is that big. Never. The tallest person that was in the Guinness Book of World Records was, I think, Robert Wadlow or something like that. He was 8'11". He was 8'11". He had a problem with his pituitary gland. He was 8'11", and although he was 8'11", he couldn't even walk. He had to walk with assistance. He wasn't mobile. This guy was a warrior. And so regardless of whether he was 6'6", which I tend more toward the low end of this scale personally, or he was 9'6", it doesn't matter. He was a big, bad person. His armor and weapons, his coat of armor weighed 125 pounds. So he had a 125-pound coat on. The scaled coat of his armor was 125 pounds. His spear was 2.5 inches in diameter. The spear head weighed 16 pounds. That's like sticking a good-sized bowling ball at the end of the stick and trying to throw it at somebody. I could barely roll a 16-pound bowling ball to the end of the bowling alley. You know? And this guy he had to throw at people. And the average size spearhead, well, they say, was around 11 or 12 pounds. So this was quite a bit bigger. He was a bigger, stronger individual and an imposing figure in his full armor, with probably in the sun shining with the brass, and just an intimidating person. Right? Imposing. Sort of the opposite of this morning. Alright, so this imposing figure comes in. Goliath stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Why do you come out and line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, and are you not the servants of Saul?" Which is interesting. We're going to talk about this in a little bit. "Choose a man and have him come down to me. If he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us." So that's the gauntlets laid down, right? The battle is easy. This battle isn't a bunch of people coming together. This battle is the champion coming out of the Philistines and calling out the champion of Israel and saying, the winner wins. If I win, you're going to be our servants. If you win, we'll be your servants. Bring it on. The original trash talk. Right? Goliath steps up and says, bring it. You win, you got us, I win, and this intimidating figure. Now, here's the thing. Here's the thing that we're going to concentrate on here in just a little bit. Goliath wasn't the only imposing figure on the battlefield that day. You see, when Saul was originally found and anointed as king, one of the things that made Saul recognizable and made everybody take to him and make everybody believe that, yeah, this is the king, was what? He was head and shoulders above everybody in Israel. Remember that? He was head and shoulders above everybody. They say, and again, maybe that's hyperbole, maybe it's just, exaggeration just to say, he was just this big, tall figure. But if Saul was, in fact, head and shoulders above everybody else, they say that they would have been about 11 inches taller than the average person. If he was 11 inches taller than the average person, and the average person was 5'7", Saul could have been as tall as 6'6". It is possible, according to Josephus, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and some of the others, that on the battlefield that day, there were two people that were around the same height that were supposed to be the champions of each one. One was Goliath of Gath, and the other was Saul. King Saul. That they were about the same, if possible, that they were about the same size. Now, let's move on. So that's the challenge that's laid out. He says, hey, send your champion out, send your guy out, and if he wins, who should have stepped up? Who should have stepped up? Who was the guy? Yeah, Saul. Then the Philistines said, "This day I defy the armies of Israel. Give me a man and let us fight each other." On hearing the Philistines' words, Saul and all the Israelites were dismayed and terrified. They were all dismayed. Who were they following? Their leader. Right? This guy that was supposed to be the champion of Israel, the guy that was supposed to defeat the enemies, is cowering and afraid. And he had been rejected. He didn't know he had been rejected yet, but he had been rejected. So keep that thing in mind. Now, here we see the future king and the errand boy, David. Now, David was the son of an Ephrathite named Jesse, who was from Bethlehem in Judah. Jesse had 8 sons, and in Saul's time he was very old. Jesse's 3 oldest sons had followed Saul to the war. So David's three of his 7 other brothers were at war. They followed him down there to watch the Philistines. And the firstborn was Eliab, the second Abinadab, and the third Shammah. David was the youngest. The 3 oldest followed Saul, but David went back and forth from Saul to tend his father's sheep at Bethlehem. He was the youngest. He had the responsibilities at home. He was a shepherd. He had to make sure the sheep were taken care of. But he would go back and forth. Now, for 40 days, the Philistine came forward every morning and evening and took his stand. 40 days. Goliath was coming out and in the face of everybody saying, just send me one person to fight me. And nobody would. Nobody would. I'm not blaming him. I probably wouldn't have either. Not probably. I wouldn't have either. I would have sent this 6'6" tall 16-year-old in my place. But anyway, for 40 days the Philistine came forward every morning and evening and took his stand. Now Jesse said to his son David, take this ephah of roasted grain and these 10 loaves of bread for your brothers and hurry to their camp. Take along these 10 cheeses to the commander of their unit. That's a pretty good spread. I don't know, it sounds good. 10 cheeses, artisan bread, I don't know. Anyway, so take along these 10 cheeses to the commander of their unit. See how your brothers are and bring back some assurance from them. They are with Saul and all the men of Israel in the valley of Elah fighting against the Philistines. Early in the morning, David left the flock in the care of the shepherd, loaded up and set out as Jesse had directed. He reached the camp as the army was going out to its battle positions, shouting the war cry. So they're coming back out, they're getting ready to go out, I guess, shout at each other, and David comes up right when that's happening, right? So this shepherd boy, the youngest in a family of 8, comes coming up with his basket full of cheese and bread, and he comes up on this scene. Israel and the Philistines were drawing up their lines facing each other. David left his things with the keeper of the supplies and ran to the battle lines and asked his brothers how they were. So he saw what was going on, he dropped his stuff off and he ran up. He probably wanted to see what was going on too, and he wanted to find his brothers and see how they were doing, because he had to report back to his dad. Alright? As he was talking with them, Goliath, the Philistine champion from Gath, stepped out from his lines and shouted his usual defiance. Send me a man and all that, you know. And David heard it. So David, this young whippersnapper, shepherd, errand boy, who's bringing cheese for the commander and bread for his brothers, and just to see how they're doing, here's what's going on. Whenever the Israelites saw the man, they all fled from him in great fear. As soon as this giant popped up, they all, they all took off. Right? Who is this guy? Who is this guy? So, David sees this. Now the Israelites have been saying, do you see how this man keeps coming out? He comes out to defy Israel. The king, who's the king? Saul, right? The king will give great wealth to the man who kills him. He's going to give money to the guy who kills him, right? He's going to give him great wealth. He will also give him his daughter in marriage. Sweeten the pot a little bit, maybe, I don't know. Kind of sort of a situational thing, right? I mean, whether it was good or bad. Give him his daughter in marriage and will exempt his family from taxes in Israel. Score! Now that sweetens the pot a little bit for some people. You know, it's like, oh, okay, I might take a risk here. I get great wealth, I get his daughter, which means I'm related to the king, which isn't a bad thing, and I don't have to pay taxes anymore. That's not a bad gig. You can do it. David asked the men standing near him, what will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel? What did you say? That sounds pretty good. That sounds all right. What will happen? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? Who's this guy think he is? And what will the king give the guy that goes out and fights him? They repeated to him what they had been saying and told him, this is what will be done for the man who kills him. David's like, all right. All right. When Eliab, who was Eliab again? David's oldest brother. But remember when Samuel went to anoint David, we talked about last week? Remember when he saw Eliab, what did he think? He thought, this has got to be the king. This guy's impressive. And what did God say? God said, no, I rejected it. Don't pay any attention to his height or his physical appearance, because God doesn't look on the outward. God looks on the heart. Right? This is the same God. When Eliab, David's oldest brother, heard him speaking with the men, he burned with anger at him and asked, why have you come down here? And with whom did you leave those few sheep in the wilderness? You see what he's doing? David steps up and says, who is this guy? Why are you guys all... I mean, number one, he shouldn't be defying the armies of Israel. Number two, you can get rich. You can just go out and fight him. And you get his daughter. Again, I don't know if it's good or bad, but you don't have to pay taxes. And what? Tell me a little bit more about this. And the brother knew what he was doing. The older brother sees what he's doing. How does he react? Why are you here? Why are you here? Who's keeping your few sheep back in the wilderness? In other words, who do you think you are? David said about the giant, who does this guy think he is? The brother who had been standing there for 40 plus days doing absolutely nothing about the giant looks at David and says, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? I love David. Well, here's what the rest of what he says. I know how conceited you are and how wicked your heart is. You came down only to watch the battle. Now, it's interesting that Eliab says the exact opposite of what God said about David. Right? You know, it's also interesting when we step up and start to be bold and brave and start to really see God work in our lives, it's sometimes surprising who pops up in our life who tries to knock us down a peg or two. And tries to remind us of who we really are. We're just, who do you think you are? Oh yeah, you're right, I'm nobody. I'm nobody. We'll get to that in a minute. I know how conceited you are and how wicked your heart is. You came down only to watch the battle. Now, I love David's response. David's like, now what have I done? Now what have I done? David was kind of just that he kind of had it, right? Whatever it is. He didn't let this bother him. He didn't let the naysaying brother bother him. He didn't let the guy that should have been supporting him or should have been fighting in the first place, he didn't let that guy bother him. He just says this, now what have I done? Said David. Can't I even speak? Can I talk? Can't I just say what I was going to say? Big brother. He then turned away to someone else. He's like, whatever. He turns away to someone else and brought up the same matter, and the men answered him as before. What David said was overheard and reported to Saul, and Saul sent for him. So Saul finally hears someone's willing. Someone's willing to fight. Even though David's brother tried to keep him from doing it, David turns to somebody else and says, now tell me again. My big brother won't stop talking. Tell me again what's going to happen. And he tells him, he said, I'm willing to do it. I'll do it. I'll fight him. And so they go and tell Saul. And Saul's like, give me this kid. Give me this man, champion, whoever. So David steps up. David steps up. David said to Saul, let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. So David's coming to the king. The future king is coming to the present king. The guy that's head and shoulders above everybody else. The guy that was supposed to be the savior of Israel. The guy that was supposed to defeat the enemies. David comes up to Saul and comforts him and says, let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him. I'll take care of it. I'll do it. No one else will, I will. That's pretty bold, isn't it? Pretty bold. It is, whether you acknowledge it or not. All right, so Saul replied, you're not able to go out against this Philistine. So Saul finally finds somebody, and then Saul sees him, and Saul's probably like, oh, okay. Got some cocky young kid who thinks he can beat everybody. He can wrestle a sheep to the ground. Yeah, I don't think you can beat this guy. He's got a shepherd's garb on. He's got a staff, and apparently he's got a slingshot. All right, good luck, buddy. But Saul's not willing to risk being servants to the Philistines over this little kid, this young whippersnapper coming out. I'm sorry, I keep using whippersnapper. I'm trying to think of a better term maybe that's not been used since the 50s or something. But anyway, a young punk, a young arrogant sucker. I don't know. Anyway, so Saul replies, "You are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You're only a young man, and he has been a warrior from his youth." This was exciting. I thought there was somebody, but you're just not it. But David said to Saul, "Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep." Now that first line probably didn't get him very far. All right, like, I know, I can smell it. All right, your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it. Now, it's a little vague on the wording, but it's actually a lion and a bear. He ends up killing both of them. Sorry, I didn't mean to give it away, but here we go. All right. When a lion and a bear came and carried off the sheep from the flock, I went after it. So he didn't, check it out. He didn't protect his sheep from the lion and the bear. At first, he didn't fend them off. What happened was the bear and the lion snuck in and grabbed the sheep and took off. So he was already gone. I would have been like, "Oh man, I still have 50 sheep. We'll be fine, we'll have a little funeral, it'll be fine," right? That would be my attitude. If I'm watching sheep and a mountain lion comes out and grabs one of them, I'm like, oops, sorry. If a bear comes out, same response. But David went after it. David hunted it down. David wasn't about to let that happen to one of his sheep. He went after it. He actually went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. All right? So he goes up. Somehow he hits it with something. I don't know what. He gets hold of it. He knocks the sheep out of its mouth. I'm sure John Swanson has a lot of animals on his farm. I'm sure he would do the same thing for one of them. But I'm not sure how you hit a bear or a lion. But he goes up and he smacks it. The sheep falls out. He grabs the sheep. Then he says, "When it turned on me," all right? So somehow he gets it, pops it, snatches the sheep back, and then, "When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it." Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's pretty amazing. And Saul was probably like, "Whoa, that's impressive. If you're telling me the truth, that's impressive. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine." Pretty amazing, isn't it? What a guy, what a story. What an amazing just act of chivalry, of bravery, to just step up like that. Saul said to David, "Go, and the Lord be with you." Saul's like, "Fine, better you than me, go ahead." Right? If you killed a bear and a lion, I'll let you at it. That's fine. So here's the thing. David couldn't be Saul, and that's okay. David couldn't be Saul, and that's okay, because check it out. Remember, Saul was a big dude, right? 6 foot plus, and Saul thinks, well, here's what we'll do. Saul dressed David in his own tunic. He put a coat of armor on him and a bronze helmet on his head. Now, have you ever tried to wear stuff that's way too big for you? I have. A lot of stuff out there is way too big for me. But I couldn't wear, someone's 6 foot plus, I'm looking pretty silly in their stuff. Let alone if I'm going out and trying to fight something very heavy, some big unwieldy helmet that's on your head all goofy. But Saul's like, well, I'm at least going to do this. The truth is, Saul should have been out there with that stuff, fighting this champion. Saul should have been this guy stepping up. But instead he puts on this regular-sized fella. David fastened on his sword over his tunic and tried walking around because he was not used to them. He's trying to figure it out. He's got this big sword. He's got all this stuff on. He's trying to walk around, trying to figure it out. And he's like, "This ain't working." "I cannot go in these," he said to Saul, "because I am not used to them." So he took them off. He's like, "I can't do this. This isn't me. This isn't me, man. I didn't need this when I fought the bear. I didn't need this when I fought the lion. I don't need it now." Then he took his staff in his hand, chose 5 smooth stones from the stream, and put them in the pouch of his shepherd's bag, and with his sling in his hand, approached the Philistine. So he just takes all the stuff off. He gets his staff. He's got a slingshot. He goes down to the stream, and he picks up 5 smooth stones, puts them in his pocket, and just takes off toward the Philistine. And that's where we're going to leave it today. That's where we're going to leave it today. But here's what I want us to grab. We're not leaving yet. Half of you are like, woo, lunchtime. All right, hang on. We're almost there. Here's the thing. I want you to notice in this story today, I want you to notice when everybody when all's said and done, in all that we read, at the battlefield, there were 4 people that talked. At the actual battlefield. There were 5 that talked in the passage, one being Jesse. All right? 5 people that are named, or 4 people that are named that talk at the battlefield. Number 1 is Goliath. Goliath came out and challenged the people, said, I'm the champion, you guys send a man, and if you win, we'll be your servant. If I win, you'll be our servants. Bring it on. That was Goliath. So who's Goliath to us now right now today in Bend 2018? I think if we want to make Goliath something, Goliath's just circumstances. Goliath's circumstances. Life throws so many crazy giants and circumstances and crazy things we don't expect that seem huge, that seem unbeatable, that seem difficult, that seem hard. It might be money problems. It might be physical problems. It could be sickness, bad diagnosis, bad relationships, a hard thing at work. It could be an addiction. It could be, you name it. It could be kids. Or maybe kids. Right? It can be, how many saw my son in his prom tux? I didn't know he could shine up that nice. Did you guys see that? He said he was getting a white tux. I'm like, white tux? Dude, he nailed it. He looks amazing. But anyway, takes that. All right, so anyway. But kids, man, that can seem daunting. Life throws so many crazy circumstances, and sometimes we don't even see it. But for the sake of today, let's think of Goliath as being those circumstances. They're big, they're difficult, they seem unbeatable, they seem like they're going to crush us, and they're scary. I know this morning that there are 2 people that are long-term members here at Foundry that are in the very last pages of the last chapter of their life. They're getting ready to graduate to heaven any moment now. There are 2 that are in our midst that are right there on the doorstep today. We've had loss here in the last year. We've had circumstances come up. We've had people pop up that have needed things that we couldn't see. You know, circumstances are difficult. Life's hard. Goliath. Now there's someone else that popped up. Saul. Saul popped up. Saul talks, and Saul's sitting there. He's the chosen one of God to lead this people. But how's he reacting when the giant comes out? When the circumstance comes out, what's he do? He gets scared. He lives in fear, and he allows fear to dictate his response. So what's he do? He says, I'm scared. Well, here's what I'll do. He tries to use what he's got to try to get the circumstance to go away. He tries to use his influence and uses his position to try to have somebody else go and handle the circumstance and make it go away. He throws money at it. He throws influence at it. He says, I'll give you money, I'll give you a girl, and I'll give you tax-free. I'll even throw in some armor. I'll do whatever it takes, but I'm not going out there. Right? That's one of the people that talked. The other one that talked was Eliab, David's older brother. David's older brother says, when David hears David starting to step up, David's older brother, who by all accounts could have been king from the looks of him, tall, handsome, all of it, David's oldest brother, when he hears his younger brother acting like he might be the one to go out and fight, he tries to discourage him. He's also reacting out of fear. He's been there for 40 days. He hasn't stepped up. He's scared. It said they were all scared. He's scared, so how does he react? He doesn't react by trying to throw money at the circumstance. He reacts by when he sees somebody else getting ready to handle his circumstances. He reacts by bullying him, by trying to belittle him, by trying to bring him down. Why? Because misery loves company, and that's what we tend to do, isn't it? When we see somebody that's successful in our eyes, when we see somebody that's doing something amazing, if we're not careful, if we know we've kind of blown some opportunities, or we're letting fear dictate our lives, when we see that, how do we react? We react by saying, who does he think he is? Who does she think she is? Going out there and doing all this stuff. Going out there and acting this way. You know, I was about to say goody two-shoes. That wouldn't help my street cred with the 50s references, would it? Anyway, you think they're just, they're just goody two-shoes. I can't think of anything else. But who are they to step up and do that? Who do you think you are to do that? And we tend to discourage people we should be encouraging when fear dictates our life. When we're living out of fear of circumstance, when we're living out of the fear of life, we're living the opposite way that God told us to live. God did not give us a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and of a sound mind. You see, it's like this. It's like you look around and you see, oh man, we're going to war with Russia. Oh man, this is going to happen. Oh man, this is going to happen. What are we going to do? We gotta hunker down. We gotta get a bunch of weapons. We gotta bunker down and protect ourselves and do whatever we can. And no, you don't. No, you don't. We can't control any of that, and there's no sense in living in fear of the what-ifs, because the what-ifs are out there, and they're what-if, and if they happen, they happen. There's nothing we can do about it. So what do? We live in the present, trusting God. What did David do? David came in. You had Goliath issuing the challenge. You had Saul backing down out of fear and trying to throw money and influence and everything else was a problem. You had Eliab living out of fear, his oldest brother living out of fear, and he's trying to discourage him, trying to get him to just go back to his fields and get out of here. Probably because he knows he should be the one stepping up, but he's not. And then you have David, the other guy that speaks, the last guy that speaks. David steps up and he just says, I'll do it. This guy, who does he think he is, defying the armies of the living God? I'll do it. What was the difference? Remember when God said to Samuel when he was anointing David, remember what he said? He said, God doesn't look on the outward. What does God look at? The heart. Later he says, David is a man after my own heart. What is a man or a woman after God's own heart? I believe it's a man or a woman that believes and trusts God. I think it's that simple. I think if we live in fear and we allow fear to dictate our lives, we allow fear of everything of life, and we try to do everything we can to, we're self-preserving. We don't have to self-preserve. If we believe God, if we believe what Jesus told us. So my question to us today is this. It's simple. This is it. This is all I'm going to say about it for the next half hour. But this is it. Because I'm not very good at winding these things down. But this is it. Do you believe Jesus when he said what he said? Do you believe him? Do you believe that Jesus is the Son of God? Do you believe he died on the cross for your sins? Do you believe he rose again the third day? Do you believe he's at the right hand of the Father? And do you believe that he said, if I go to prepare a place, I'm not going to leave you out of it. I'm going to come and get you, and we're going to spend eternity together in a new heaven and a new earth that I'm going to create for me and you, and we're going to be together forever. You're joint heirs with me. We're going to be together with the Father forever and ever and ever. Do you believe that? Amen. If you believe that, stop living in fear. Stop. Stop. Right? Stop. What we need to do in here today is we don't need any more Sauls. We don't need any more Sauls that have some money, try to throw money at problems, try to throw influence at problems, tries to get out of things by our means, tries to escape things by our means, tries to escape hard conversations by our means, tries to escape these different things because we have influence, because we have a little... Listen, we don't need any more of those. We don't need any Sauls. We don't need any Eliabs who when we see somebody out there trying to follow God, trying to follow what God has for them, it may be crazy, it may not be what we envision for them, it may not be any of that, but we need a bunch of people who stop discouraging people from following and pursuing God in crazy pursuits. We need to start encouraging people that do that. We need to start encouraging them, believing God that God has something for them, and believing God that God can work outside of our own comfort zones. You know what we need more of? We need more Davids. And I'm not saying that by saying, hey, we need more kings that are going to be amazing leaders. No. We need people that just believe God. We need people that trust God. We need people in here that just say, you know what? Life's hard. And I go back to so many different things, and I've seen it so much from you guys. I've seen so many of you walk through so many difficult roads and so much difficulty, and you say it's okay because God's got this. It's okay. I trust God. And your testimony going through that encourages the rest of us to be able to face our Goliath, not worried about Goliath killing us, but knowing that somehow God has got this and it's okay. And Goliath will go somewhere else sometime, somehow, some way, because God is going to take care of me either here or forever, but God has this because I believe what He said.
Amen.
So my question for us today simply is this. Do you believe God or do you not? You can. So stop living in fear. Stop worrying about everything life might throw at you, could throw at you, and stop worrying about the end times. We don't know. You know, so many churches are so geeked up and worried about what might happen in the future. We don't know. Have you read Revelation? You don't know either. You know? I'm just telling you, you don't. But I'm telling you this, I know who's going to bring it about, and I know who's going to make it happen, and I know the very end is us in a new heaven and a new earth, gathered around the throne of our Father God, celebrating together, worshiping together, and enjoying His bountiful creation with the lion laying down with the lamb, and peace on earth, goodwill toward men. Amen? Let's trust Him because He's trustworthy. Let's believe Him because He's God. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, I just ask as we kind of set this up for the big fight next week. David v. Goliath. God, I ask that you would help us to be like David in the sense that we believe you and we trust you. And if you've got something for us, we're going to go. If there's a circumstance in front of us, we can face it. If something comes up, even if it seems like it's killing us physically, even if it does kill us physically or harm us physically, nothing can touch us. Nothing can take what matters. You have that. That we can live at peace here in our hearts and with each other because your promises are true. So help us, Lord, as we face the circumstances of life that pop up, that are scary, that can easily lead us down a path of fear. Help us to remember that you are true, and you are right, that you are trustworthy, and you are our God, and you are our Father. And God, give us the holy boldness to just be able to trust that you've got this regardless of what it is, because you do have it regardless of what it is. Help us to trust you, help us to help each other. Help us to love you and help us to love each other. Amen.